Hi, I'm Peter Cowan, the Bee Whisperer. I am in my Good Shepherd Food Bank yard, and this is, I hope, my last significant feeding week in this yard. They've been getting fed now for about 4 weeks or so, and we are now, the 4th of October. It's a beautiful fall day, but today we had our first significant freeze. So I suspect that the asters that are in bloom are pretty much coming to an end now. It's pretty definitely will have finished off the goldenrod. There's a few odd bits and pieces which might be producing a little bit of nectar, but from here on in, the bees are entirely dependent on what we give them here in Maine. So this yard is, out of all these hives, 2 have got double brood chambers, where combined hives that didn't look up to scratch for the fall. Didn't look like they'd make it through the winter, so I added them onto 2 others. They've all got hive top feeders on, and they've been taking the sugar syrup down very nicely. So each of those single brood chamber hives will probably, when I'm done, weigh about 80 to 90 pounds, so they'll be very hard to move. I don't have a hive scale going out here, but I can pretty much tell by the feel of a hive whether this is full or this is not quite full. So I'll be hefting the hives to feel the weight on them and topping up these feeders. Most of these feeders will probably have some feed left in them. Last week, about half had some feed left. I think now most will have a little bit of feed left, and it means they're slowing down taking the sugar syrup because there's less and less room to put the sugar syrup in, and because the sugar syrup is colder. So in about 2 weeks time, typically here in Maine, it will be too late to do any more feeding. Actually, more like a week's time, it will be too late on average to do much more feeding, because the bees will not be able to cure the sugar syrup. I think these hives are pretty much ready for the winter. They felt very close to it last week, a week ago today, when I was last here feeding. But I'll just check them out, top up the feeders with what I can, or what I think they'll take over the next week, because I don't want to waste sugar syrup either. Some of these feeders will hold 4 gallons. There's no way that some of these hives will need 4 gallons. Maybe a gallon, maybe even 2 if they feel like there's a bit of room in there. I've only brought 40 gallons with me, so I don't want to waste it. To make up this, I had to use over 200 pounds of sugar, which costs quite a bit of money. And I'm getting through my last delivery of 2,000 pounds of sugar pretty quickly. But hopefully I won't have to order another ton of sugar this fall. This yard is the nearest to being ready for winter, but I think my other yards are not much more than a week behind. So let's see where we are. For a change, we'll start at this end. Normally start at the other end of the yard. Oh, I'd say we've got a good 1.5 gallons of sugar syrup still in here. And they're feeling good and heavy. But I'll put a bit more food in there, because this one feels like it could probably take the 2 gallons or so. So I want to make sure I'm close to 2 gallons in there. This feeder is empty. Oh, and that hive is heavy. So I'll put about a gallon in here. I want to keep them right now by continuing to feed them even though they're relatively full. The last food in is the first food eaten. So they'll be living on the sugar syrup for the next week or two without using up their honey stores. And if possible, if they do empty any honey stores, they'll be able to fill it back up again. So I want to make sure that I'm keeping some feed on them, but I don't have to put a really heavy load of feed on them. Still maybe half a gallon of sugar syrup in this hive. That's pretty heavy. Put a bit more. A little less than another gallon. There's a good 2 gallons in here still. Yeah, they're gonna be fine. Don't need to top that up at all. So at this stage, we're just making the call how much food we think they can still fit in and making sure they have it at their disposal. Ooh, enormous big bug. That's empty. Ooh, look at the bees come out. Wow. Stirred them up. It's full. That's full, but we'll give them another gallon. Good to see a good population of bees in the hive for the winter time. There's about half a gallon in here. Top that up a bit. One went a good way. Still full of syrup. Pretty close anyway. Throw half a gallon in there. And also at this time of year, because the syrup has to stay on the hive for quite a while, and it's going in slowly, I've been adding, it may surprise you, a little bit of bleach to my sugar syrup. I've been adding the equivalent of about 1 teaspoon per gallon of sugar syrup. And that will stop the sugar syrup from getting moldy that's probably about the concentration that you'd find chlorine in tap water. But it'll stop yeasts and bacteria eating up the sugar. Now this is a colony that I don't think will make it through the winter. It's very light. I think it's getting robbed out. I'm going to fill it up as best I can. This is the one hive I have a question mark over as to whether it's going to make it. Could combine it. But right now, it's a bit cold. I'm just going to keep it going like this. There's about a gallon in here, a little more. These are taking it down nicely. And I suspect that this feed will be the last one of any significance I'm giving to them. Probably next week all I'll do is put something in the open feeders. There's about 2 gallons in here. That hive is pretty full. This doesn't need any more. Half a gallon left. Hive's pretty heavy. Bees are coming up for it. A little bit left. The odd bee is finding its way into the feeder, but that happens. A little bit more in. About 2 gallons in there still. Finish off what's in here. Gallon and a half. Oh, and that hive's full. Nice. That's ready. About a gallon in there still. Squeeze another gallon in there. in there. Still got a bit more. About 2 gallons still in here. Maybe I'll put a bit more. Not much. I'd rather waste a bit of syrup than give them too little. Good. There's 2 gallons in the top, and this hive is filled up beautifully. It is remarkable just how well, when you combine 2 colonies for the winter, how well they consolidate, and it really does seem to stimulate things enormously, and they've reached a critical mass where they can rear the brood they needed to root and store the food. They've reared the brood that they needed to rear, and they can store the food they needed to store. So combining colonies prior to the winter really does pay dividends. You may reduce the number of bees that you have, the hives that you have going into the winter, but far better to have a few really healthy hives going into the winter than nursing through more sickly hives. Oh, that's full. Very nice. The last few. Considering there's a frost, good to see that there's enough bees that they're still clustering out to the front of the hive. That's a sign of a nice big cluster. And it's actually quite characteristic of single colony management, because you reduce the population from a relatively large hive to overwintering in a much more smaller, much more compact unit. Oh, 2 gallons there, hive is full. It's full of bees. This one's looking good. Gallon and a half in here, and it's full. Don't need to add anything to this. And last but not least, another double. About a gallon feed in here. That's nice. But that one has more room, so I'll just finish off what's in this container. Wasn't very much anyway. So things look really good here. I have gone from last week using 10 of those to now using 3. Shows just how much progress we've made in terms of how close the hives are to being full. I think what I'll do though is we've got a couple of really nice warm days coming, so I'll use that last 5-gallon container, which actually only holds about 4. I'll put it in the open feeders, as I do like them doing some open feeding this time of year. So that's 4 of my units used up, and I've got 6 more from my Bangor yard where I'm heading next. That one too used just about the same amount of sugar syrup last week, and again 40 gallons or so, and those hives felt a little less full when I was there last week, so I anticipate probably the 6 containers of sugar syrup would be just about right for that yard. Anyway, I might do another video tomorrow about feeding. These are with hive top feeders. My Bangor yard uses bucket feeders, but I'm doing feeding in a different way in some of the other yards where I'm trying to get it in faster, where we had a honey flow and I've taken it off and there's still a fair amount of room to fill up. So more of that in future videos, so watch this space. I'm Peter Cowan, the Bee Whisperer, from a beautiful fall day in Maine. See you next time.